well, certainly Stained is probably the biggest to ever come out of Springfield.
Without Aaron's lyrics, without the way his lyrics, you're not going to get a band like Stained. Without Mike being able to put together some real amazing music, it's a perfect combination.
I don't think I've ever been more excited in my life.
It's kind of hard to sleep at night, thinking about all the stuff that could happen.
Initially playing with Limp Bizkit, Fred didn't like him at all.
You know what? You always knew it with Aaron. You could always see his talent. You know, whether or not you could actually say this kid will make it someday. It's tough, but he had a lot of talent. He was a nice kid, and you could just see it. You could just see it in his eyes. You could hear it in his voice. You could, when he played, his whole demeanor, everything about him.
Aaron Lewis seems to be more into this cathartic poetry about the pain he's suffered as a child or whatever like that.
New England Stained formed in November of 1995 in Springfield, Massachusetts. They've seen a few changes in the band, but eventually settled on the lineup of Aaron Lewis on vocals, Mike Mushak on guitar, Johnny April on bass, and John Wysocki on drums. It was then just a matter of taking on the locals.
Rich DiMaria, I own Breakers Billiards, West Springfield, Massachusetts. The first time I saw him in concert was at my club, Macaras, and great performers. And humble guys, nice guys too, professionals, always professional, everything. From the time they walked in to the time they left at night.
My name is Quinn. I do the morning radio show here on Laser 99.3 WLZX. I came across them about 3 years ago when I first moved up here. And this is prior to Dysfunction being put out. And they had actually, Tormented was out, but we were playing Mud Shovel on the station and a couple of their other tunes. And came across them, and really just nice guys. You know, kind of guys you go out and see them in downtown Springfield. And they played all the time, and they stopped playing a lot of the cover stuff they did, and they really sort of came into their own with their own music, which is scary for them because they, you know, it's tough to make money doing that. It's tough to create a living, and I'm sure you know the story. You know, it sort of fell right in their lap, luckily.
My name is George Lenker. I'm a local music and arts writer. I'm also have been a local musician, but I've since retired. The first time I heard of them was 1997. I think that's when they put out their self-released local album, if I'm not mistaken. That's when I first started paying attention to them. I probably heard their name before that, just because it's misspelled with the, you know, without the E and the D. and I didn't know much about them. But they may have been around before that. I know Aaron Lewis was in a band, I think, called the Geckos before that, and plus he played acoustically at a couple clubs by himself a lot.
Well, my name is Ray Mason, and I actually got my first guitar in 1964 when I graduated from the 8th grade. My grandmother got it for me. It was a Sears Silvertone. And I started my first band in about 1966 in Holyoke, Massachusetts. I mean, like I said before, I don't really know the people in Stain, but definitely it seems like they just shot right up there.
What Stain did, and there are other bands that have done in the past, they were a cover band. And they played great music. They were a great cover band, and they slowly worked in their originals here and there, but they maintained their base as a cover band. And when they got to the point where they had a big following, then they started introducing their original music so that they had a base to start with, and then people loved it and they took off from there.
My name is Adam Greenberg. I'm the bass player, backing vocalist in the Maggies. And I have my own little side project called the Greenbergs that I front, play guitar. I mean, the first I heard of them was that I saw a video, I guess, of the lead singer, Aaron, playing before, just an enormous crowd singing one of his songs, just him and an acoustic guitar with Fred Durst sitting behind him. And I was like, oh, who are these guys? And then, months later, found out that they were from Springfield and had been here, years and years, and had been playing in different bands. And oddly enough, only being 20 miles away from where they were playing every single weekend, I never heard of them, which is pretty typical in this area. Bands just sort of roll through, and if you scroll through the papers, you can see any number of different band names that you'll probably see on MTV in 2 years to come.
If you're not a headline act, it can be hard to get noticed. For Stain, Springfield was a tough audience to crack.
My name's Michael Ferry. I'm a performer, songwriter. Springfield is the kind of town that you have to mean it. You have to be honest, and obviously you have to be proficient in what you do. The audiences can sniff out a faker in a moment.
My name is Don Rook, and I grew up in Springfield. I lived in Northampton for about the past 15 years, and then with a couple of friends started a music festival called the Northampton Music Festival, which is about 4 years old. I mean, I'm delighted for them because, just because they're from Springfield, and Springfield's kind of like, a city that gets dissed on quite a bit.
I moved to this area when I was 14. My parents got separated, and I moved to Amherst, and that's where I met Jay Mascis, which got me started in Dinosaur Jr. In about 1985. And pretty much it just started. The career started and kind of slowly took off from there. And got a little bigger every year until we were a national act and touring, and then a global act and then touring.
The people of Springfield have varied tastes. they can also be picky about what they want to listen to.
Because we were the type of band, we were far too loud and sloppy and obnoxious, and we didn't really compromise our musical values or integrity at all. So we pretty much got banned from all the clubs in town. And the scene here was very different. There was, you know, back in the 80s, the punk rock scene was a lot more happening, and there was a lot bigger of a buzz kind of going on around town. But for us, it was still, people really didn't, I kind of got the sense that we were resented a bit.
My name is Lord Russ, and I am in a band called the Aloha Steam Train. In a way, I think it's a blessing because it's such a relaxed, atmosphere that people can create whatever they want and work on it, spend as many hours a week as they want on it without having to work 80 hours a week in New York to try to maintain an apartment. Because rent around here is really cheap, so people have time to work on their music and create something different.
After their lineup was complete, Staind started to write original songs. It wasn't long before they realized that if they were going to do gigs in Springfield, they would have to play covers as well.
I remember a few years ago, maybe it was more like 5 years ago, I'm not sure, a friend of mine, Jean, saying to me, "Boy, you should try and get this band Staind to come and play at the Bay State." And I said, "Oh, who are they?" I said, "Well, they're from Springfield, and they're like a rock band. They do mostly covers."
What Staind did, and there are other bands that have done it in the past, they were a cover band. And they played great music. They were a great cover band, and they slowly worked in their originals here and there, but they maintained their base as a cover band. And when they got to the point where they had a big following, then they started introducing their original music so that they had a base to start with, and then people loved it and they took off from there.
Primarily, you got bands like Staind who have been around doing cover songs, for crying out loud. These guys are older than you might think. They're not young boys, but they've been around for a while, so they still have a lot of fans that know them from the olden days.
My name is Tommy Pluta, and I am a sales representative here at Laser 993 WHMP. I actually started a program here several years ago called the Big Bang Music Explosion, featuring local and regional modern rock or rock, and it's still going strong today on Sunday nights. They played so often back when it wasn't really, like I thought I had to see them anytime soon. We did play a few shows with them, opening for them, and they were actually a cover band at the time. But the nice thing about that, and the respectable thing about that, in this area it seemed like tribute bands, if you will, seem to always do well, make the most money, play a lot. They were, I don't want to say they were a tribute band, they played a lot of Pearl Jam. They came out with their own CD, and that was it with the covers. It was all serious business at that point. Mike, when I met him through the disc and everything, and we talked about things, and my advice to him was get good representation. Make sure you're covered there, even if it costs you money now, because it won't be a fraction of what it could cost you have you not have the right representation. So we talked a little bit about that kind of business. And I saw them a few times like that, and then the next time, sad enough, it was a long time in between. They've stopped by the station here a few times, and I just wasn't able to make it down. But I saw them at the Mullins Center recently with Godsmack, and I thought they were great.
You know what? You always knew it with Aaron. You could always see his talent. You know, whether or not you could actually say this kid will make it someday, it's tough. But he had a lot of talent. He was a nice kid, and you could just see it. You could see it in his eyes. You could hear it in his voice. When he played, his whole demeanor, everything about him.
They're schooled musicians. Like I said earlier, they're not the youngest guys in the world, but Mike's a very, very good guitar player. Johnny's been playing bass. I think Johnny's about 96 years old now. And of course, John on drums. But as far as guitar and talent, these guys used to sit and practice and practice and practice. And if you ask them, they'll tell you. I'd sit at home after coming home from falsetti music or something like that. We'd come home and we'd practice and practice and practice, and they loved doing it, and that just got them better. That's what's created their talent. It's all about hard work.
Well, I never told him it wouldn't work out because I'm a performer, and I never pursued my dream when I got out of high school. And the fact that he pursued his, he's won the admiration of his three sisters and his brother, who say Johnny's the only one that does what he really loves to do and gets paid for it.
If you want to get famous, you need a little help. Luckily, there was a thriving local rock radio station in the form of Laser 99.3. It was there that Staind first got played to the masses.
Well, the station, prior to being a modern rock station or an alternative station, was a top 40 station. The station's been around the frequency's been around for some years, but it was a top 40 station prior to this, and then was modern rock, and before that, and then sort of went partially active rock, and then now it's full-on active rock. It's always been very local dominant. There's been a local show Sundays, and Hayes has gotten a lot of national props, if you will, for being really good at weeding out a lot of the crap that's out there and bringing up to the cream of the crop, cream to the top, And Stain's been, we've been playing Stain since day one on that show, well before their main major label release came out.
Definitely radio station airplay seems to break a band, and the commitment by a label to put the money up front to be able to get you into that position so that you can capitalize. And then touring actually will help too at a certain point when that kicks in, and being able to be in a position where you're on tour with bands that are doing well and having that exposure is very important. Change format. We used to be more of we were 99.3 Rocks, which was more of a, I don't want to say modern rock, but it was certainly not active rock and what's popular today with the kind of music that's going on. But the popularity has also become because of the stations that were in our backyard that we kind of driven back to Connecticut and driven back towards Boston, and now we've taken over our backyard again. So just through that, I think the popularity is there. But MTV plays a big part of that whole what's fresh, what's hip. People tend to be able to latch on to something like that, so they're able to find it with our station because it is popular with teens and young adults today. Interestingly enough, because I had a local and regional modern rock program here at the station, it was brought to my attention that they had a release coming out, and got a quick copy. I might have phoned Michael and asked for a copy, but nonetheless, there's several tracks on there that were very good. There was some swears and some language in there that wasn't appropriate for radio at the time, so talking to Mike about it, I said I could probably do something on my computer where I digitally can edit the arrangement so that it will make sense musically for you and I can play it for you. And he said, why don't you go ahead and give it a try. And I did that for him on three tracks, Mud Shovel being one of the tracks on there. And I was able to do it. They were very happy. They laughed. They thought it was kind of neat that they were able to be rearranged like that, because it was new at the time that you could do things like that. And we had them up to do the program, and it was the first time they ever had heard themselves on radio, and I think they were pretty happy about that. I remember cranking the dial up in there, and they were talking. I said, listen. And we jacked it up in the studio, and they all had smiles on their faces. It was great to be a part of that, not knowing a few years later they'd be as big as they are. They're as big as you can possibly get, I think. They're topping the charts right now, and I'm very proud for them and of them.
Knowing where to play and getting gigs can often be a problem for a band. Stain cut their teeth into Springfield's rock and roll youth by endlessly playing the clubs up and down the area. It was here that their music started to hit a chord with the hard rock crowd.
Right now, the biggest, it's the hard rock stuff. People are really, really just going crazy for it. There are, of course, bands like Hypnotic Kick that are even a little bit of Hispanic-oriented hard rock, really just dominating locally right now. And the Massachusetts scene itself has spawned some pretty big bands like Godsmack and Reveille, and of course Stained. And people are big on the hard stuff around here.
Typically a rock band that's starting around here, pretty much no matter what they're playing, but hard rock included, probably start playing some of the smaller clubs, gathering an audience, bringing up a following, and then they graduate to the larger clubs, and then hopefully they're able to propel themselves into some situations where they're able to open for some national acts and do some networking and eventually be on their way.
I don't really play off of that too much. Everybody knows who they are, where they came from, and I don't try to jump on that. I don't lead people to believe that if they play for me, they're going to be the next Stain. I don't do that.
It wasn't all fun and games, though. In his spare time, drummer John Wysocki would double as a bouncer at Makara's nightclub.
I don't know if you can relate the two. John he was a great guy at the door because he's got such a great personality. We're not the kind of club where you have to wrestle people out and throw them out the door. He didn't have to worry about stuff like that. But he was there to check IDs for people and he was almost like a local celebrity too at that point. And now he was great at it because people loved him.
After winning over the local crowd and integrating their own songs into their set, Stain decided to record and release their first album, Tormented.
Everybody was buying that disc, and the people who bought it and held on to it, now they're a hot item. Everybody wants them. Now they're red hot. Everybody wants them. But yeah, they were selling strong locally.
My name is Kit Rebhan. I'm the studio manager of NRG. I think when bands do record an album, if they haven't recorded before, I think when they go into a studio it can be fairly intimidating and a little overwhelming with the possibilities. I think on the first album that can show sometimes. However, you do get that inexperienced thing where it's fresh and it's new. By the time the second and third album, sometimes they spend too long and they nitpick too hard. So I think after a few successful albums, sometimes they double question themselves. They keep questioning themselves of whether they're going in the right direction. Whereas in the first album, there tends to be, well, this is it. You know, they don't think too hard, and they're overwhelmed by everything else going on. So I think sometimes first albums are really good. They're really fresh.
One track that stood out from all the rest was Mud Shovel. It would go on to be re-recorded and become a Stained classic.
The first time I heard Mud Shovel was off their CD release party for Tormented. It was at Macara's nightclub, and they played it, and everybody knew, and the staff talked about it after the show was over. Everybody knew that was a hit, and they were on their way.
Yes, it was. I was looking forward to that. That was my biggest thing when I heard the record, Dysfunction. I was wondering what things would sound like, and you know, drum sounds, guitar sounds, Aaron's voice, how they produced his voice. And when I heard Mud Shovel, it's not far away from where it was. Just a little more tightened up, I suppose, arrangement-wise, and the playing on it. It's just a little, you know, in the right frame to get it to the point where, in today's market of music and computer technology with Pro Tools and the things they can do now, the consistency has to be there, and I think they were able to get that, yet keep the energy of the band so that their live performance and studio performance are not too far apart.
To me, it's almost the same song. It was reworked a little bit, but the core is still there. It's just pretty much the same song as they had back then. You know, they remixed it a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, without question. I mean, that's the kind of song that's gonna, especially at the time that Mud Shovel came out, even prior to Mud Shovel being as big as it was that scene was more of an underground scene, and it was real gritty stuff and throaty stuff and screaming, but it was also very melodic. And Stained has done that, I think, since they started playing their own stuff. They've combined the real heavy with the real melodic, and that's been their key to success, and certainly the key to their success on radio.
My name is Matt Griffin, and I've been at NRG for a little over 3 years now. I think that being a great live band and a great touring band and embracing that is absolutely reflected in the recording studio. Their records have such a live feel to them. It doesn't feel like a processed thing at all. It's very organic. I think that's the nature of their music, is very organic, and so it comes across so well live and so easily translated in the studio. And because they love to tour and they tour so much, it does just generate, you know, their chops are constantly, you know, being worked, and so when they come to the studio, they're ready to go.
Like I said, we heard that song Mud Shovel in the CD release party. You knew that it was there, and and they're on their way with if they had they got a little bit of luck and the right guy to help them out, you knew they were going.
The band's big break came October 23, 1997. Stained performed with Limp Bizkit at the Webster Theater in Hartford, Connecticut.
Then, of course, all of a sudden, you know, Fred Durst liked them. They played with his band, and they played with a couple other. They opened for them, and all of a sudden he grabbed them, and all of a sudden they're on their way. And you know, good for them. But obviously, Fred Durst had a lot to do with it.
Limp's Fred Durst almost didn't let them play after taking offense to Stained's album cover art. But after seeing the set, he was so impressed that he invited the band to come to Jacksonville to work on their new material.
I don't think I've ever been more excited in my life.
It's kind of hard to sleep at night, and you're like thinking about all the stuff that could happen.
That was a scary scene for those guys, and I've talked to them about it a couple times. They get asked about that an awful lot, so I try not to, when I see them, I try not to talk about it, even though I'm really curious on what the deal is with that. But you know, initially playing with Limp Bizkit, Fred didn't like them at all. He thought they were anti-religious and all devil and the upside down cross and this thing, that thing. Once he heard them play though, and he realized that that's not the way they were, he was smart. Smartest thing old Freddie Durst ever did, I think.
My name's Kevin Conley. I own an independent music store in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Me and my 3 other brothers have owned a few different establishments in this community for a while. It's a fairly positive, it's staying pretty positive scene. Everybody's starting a band, everybody's starting this, you know. It's almost unbelievable, and I think a lot of it has to do with Limp Bizkit coming from here and making it so big. And Fred's whole approach on like MTV, always talking about he's a fan, now he's on the other side of the barricade. So it really fuels a lot of dreams for people to think that they could make it happen.
What's up, Fred, Wes? I love you.
So you'll get like, I mean, everybody and their mother coming in here. They're starting a hip-hop metal band. It's almost gotten to the point that it's out of control now, but I mean, I've never seen anybody get recognized as quickly as they have, or, you know, as thoroughly as they have.
My name is Nicholas Wagner. I'm the manager here at Westside Tattoo. Freddie Durst was working here for, I believe, a period of 6 to 8 months, and he's ended up in Limp Bizkit, you know, real big, blew up real big. A lot of people in town know who he is and real familiar with him, and you know, he wasn't here long, but we all got to know him. I think it's nice to see Fred trying to help out some of the people he used to know.
Well, obviously, what was it, Fred Durst, I guess, from Limp Bizkit, heard them, they opened for them, and then they gave him a tape or something like that, and then he produced them, right? I believe that's the story that happened. So, I mean, you know, some people say, well, they were in the right place at the right time, you know, but the fact remains that they're out there now, like, touring constantly and really, you know, becoming quite known, and that seems like a grueling schedule to me.
Fred Durst's production skills and connections soon saw the band signed with Flip and Elektra Records. Stained were now an inspiration for all the other bands in Springfield.
It's a combination of luck and being out there. You have to be in the face of people. You have to be in the face of the radio. You have to be in the face of your fans. You have to play, 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 play. And you have to give up an awful lot.
I don't know. People say it's the world's toughest business. I think life in general is as tough as you make it, you know. And I've always figured, you know, we're not saving lives, we're making music.
Getting signed is just like getting in the batter's box. From there, you know, whether you strike out, fly out, get to first base, second, third, or a home run is really dependent upon a lot of hurdles that come your way during that process. Healthy label, people willing to work your record, timing, money, it comes down to a lot of things.
Record companies do drop platinum acts, but you normally find that as they drop them, somebody else will pick them up. Generally, if a band has got a platinum album, they've shown a lot of talent, they can go out there, they can do their stuff. To be a platinum seller, you've got a lot of fans out there. And fans, I think, you've got to give them a bit of credit. If somebody's good, they tend to not desert the people they like, and they do show a lot of interest for their next album. And I think fans are a lot more loyal than people give credit for. So.
I'm
sure there are A&R label guys running around Springfield, maybe not as we speak, but I'm sure they've come down and looked around or talked to some club owners or maybe talked to some booking agents, which is kind of I think that having a band come from someplace like that is a red herring. I don't think they necessarily, it means just because one band broke out doesn't mean there's a wealth of bands here. I think there are a wealth of bands here, but there aren't a wealth of bands like Stained here.
Since releasing Dysfunction and their rise to stardom, some fans have accused Stained of changing their sound to suit a wider market.
Selling out. There's a lot of people that view an artist that's being played on the radio as, or being featured on MTV and the like as selling out. I don't believe that. I think that that's just an artist that's trying to get their music out to the widest listening audience possible.
I didn't see much of that until after their CD release party, and that's when people were hoarding around them and hovering around them. I remember being up on stage, and there's a lot of activity around, and people were all excited, and they were all pumped up because they knew how great the show went. Yeah.
It's a great way. It's a really great way for these guys, because not only does it follow in suit with the way that these guys have worked so hard, but it's a great way for this band to make it. Just like it's a great way for Dysfunction not to have been a giant, huge blow-up success immediately, and then to have Break the Cycle come out and have that be even, obviously, the giant success it has been. It's justice, and it's sweet, and it's a revolution in music.
I think for some bands it would be hard to maintain credibility when you're trying to get radio hits, or especially if you've had a radio hit. People are now starting to recognize that they are good musicians and that they have great songs. I don't think them getting radio hits is so much a change on their part as much as it is a recognition on the part of the fans.
How do you deal with walking up to a fan and seeing a tattoo of your face on their arm? How do you deal with that? How do you suppose, what do you suppose goes through his mind? He's a pretty basic, nice, real, just a giver. Pauly Shore called him a giver. That's what he is, and he's a nice guy. And how do you do that? And then some of the things that these kids are relating to. I remember initially when they first started to get big after Dysfunction, the funny thing about it was they started to hear about pop-up bands in Michigan and in Iowa, bands that would be like cover bands. Because this is essentially a cover band, Stained. And they started to see other bands covering them and being Stained cover bands. And it was crazy for them. So I don't know how he deals with it, but hopefully he's got a good therapist and a lot of good friends and family, and that should get him through it.
To have a top-selling album, you have to work hard. Stained took their sound out on the road and toured with Limp Bizkit to bigger and bigger crowds. It wasn't long before they were topping the charts.
They toured relentlessly, and they had a good time. As far as I can tell, it doesn't seem like they were really out to get, the major deal. They just wanted to go out and, have a good time and make sure everybody else was having a good time. It seems like all the bands that have that corporate mentality don't really go anywhere.
I think that's the secret for any band, is if they can get out and get in touch with the people and their fans and create sort of a regional fan base and then more of a national fan base. The fans are going to come back, especially if you're friendly with the fans and you really cater to their needs and spend some time with them after shows, and they're going to come back and see you.
It's fun to a certain degree. It's a different type of job. I know when I did it, certainly the job was really traveling from town to town. The actual playing was fun. The chance to actually stretch out, you know, because you're in a van or a bus with people. You're like this little microcosm that travels around, and then eventually you get into a town. You're very aware that people are there to either, you know, they love what you do, they want to, you know, meet you and things like that, but it's not, you realize that, and you run with it. It's fun. You can certainly get caught up in it. At some point early on, you realize what it is, and if you're smart enough to just keep it what it is, then you'll succeed. If you get caught up in it and decide to get into other things, then you can easily be your own demise or your worst enemy, supposed to not enjoy it.
It was different for us because the band I was in, the first band, was really straight edge. They weren't into partying that much, so we were pretty diligent about stuff and weren't that irresponsible. So we didn't really do the sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing the way a lot of people do, which was probably pretty fortunate, I think. I think we were able to, we had a good reputation as like not trashing clubs and dressing rooms and showing up on time and delivering a good show.
Because they're such a tight unit and good players and everything, they realize nobody's going to do it for them. They have to do it for themselves. And as long as they can maintain a level of sanity through it all, they'll be able to continue on with their success until they choose not to do it, which is rare in itself, so that the industry isn't dictating what happens to you. They're at a point now where they can dictate what happens to them.
After the success of Dysfunction and endless touring, it was time for Stain to record their new album. They headed to LA to record Break the Cycle at NRG Studios.
Recently the bands have actually come into NRG, are bands like Korn, Limp Bizkit, 311, Sugar Ray. We actually have Sugar Ray in at the moment.
We have 3 different rooms here. We have Studio A, B, and C. Studio A and B are both what we call tracking rooms. It's where all the recording is done. In both of those rooms, we have 2 vintage Neve consoles and part of a really nice warm sound.
We don't really specialize in any type of music as such. We can take, you know, all different types of music, but we tend to be more of the rock. Yeah, we could do like metal stuff as well, but we tend to be more the alternative type rock, you know, whatever's considered alternative today.
Basically, the first day of the session would be the setup day. Everybody comes in, you know, they set up their instruments and you know, how they feel most comfortable. The engineers spend the day basically getting the sounds. There's not a whole lot of performing, recording that generally goes on in the first day. Being that most people spend 6 to 8 weeks here, it's just kind of like moving into, it's kind of like going to college for your first day. Everybody's just getting settled in and kind of, you know, making themselves feel at home.
Typically, it's 6 to 8 weeks for tracking, and then a couple of weeks of mixing. People are inclined to do recalls on a mix. Once they listen to it, they go to their cars, their home, and everything like that. And then they fine-tune it and come back and recall a mix. But I would say 6 weeks is a good time for tracking an album at NRG, and then an extra couple of weeks of mixing.
Generally, when the drums are recorded, everybody's playing along. and everybody else's instruments are just considered scratch tracks, which may or may not get used in the final product, generally not. And then after that, that's really the only time the full band plays together. After that, everybody's recording their parts individually, the overdubbing process, as it's called. Drums and the bass definitely are the foundation of the song. That's what everything is built from, and if that's not there, and if that's not there in a very strong fashion, then it's hard to move forward.
With their new album topping the charts and increasing popularity, the future looks good for Springfield Stained.
You know, if they ever get stuck for material, they can always call me. But I think they'll do okay. I think they'll write good songs. They'll be able to change with the times, and they'll be able to sort of do their own thing if it's a certain style. If they decide to go off and do something new, I think they'll be able to take their audience with them.
I think the second album does take longer. I think when a band's had a first album that's been very successful, then they tend to worry about the failure of a second album, as if that's going to make and break their career. You know, they have a second album that dives, we're never going to do well again. And I think sometimes people are a little too serious about it.
You got to have a combination of excellent musicianship, first and foremost, with real detailed, creative lyricism. Without Aaron's lyrics, without his lyrics, you're not going to get a band like Stained. Without Mike being able to put together some real amazing music, it's a perfect combination. That's what'll get you really far.
Now, Aaron Lewis seems to be more into this cathartic, poetry about, the pain he's suffered as a child or whatever like that. And that's fine. Apparently a lot of kids relate to that.
You know, obviously Stained has a talent level that's very high. So you have to match that talent level, and then you have to work hard the way those guys worked hard, and you have to build a fan base locally and expand out from there. And I think that's the way they did it, and they did it the right way, and it paid off for them.
It was interesting as far as timing, I guess, in that Stained was already doing sort of what it's big now, back when it wasn't popular. And now that it has, it will probably be here for a while. I think they're the type of band with their songwriting where they'll be able to change with it and still be who they are. And that's one unique thing about them, and I think something that you could see early on. So I think they'll have no problem as long as they keep producing great material, which they seem to be able to do. Unless things change where it's all of a sudden all radio stations are playing Britney Spears, please don't let that happen. But if it happens to be that way, then I think there'll be time. Maybe we can all own a restaurant together, or maybe be lifeguards or something like that, and talk about the good old days. But I don't see that happening, so I think they'll be okay.